Yay. Okay, so we are live. Yay. Hello, everyone. It is Fearless Friday, and I'm super excited today. I know I say that every week. I'm always super excited to talk to everybody, but today we have Ben DeCastro, who was a marketing freaking genius, who is a marketing genius. He worked for Cardi's. I think so, at least. He worked for Cardi, so he was the man behind the three men, the Nairobi, and is now a radio personality and marketing and social media, just tons of awesome things. So without further ado, I give you all Ben DeCastro. So welcome, Ben.
And subsequently everybody gives me back. So there you go. Turn away. How are you doing? It's great to see you.
Yay, it's great to see you too. I mean, we go way back to Cardi's, the community room, doing events. I used to be an event planner. So it was always a pleasure working with anything that Cardi does is always fun. So, but it was always a pleasure working with you on that. So, oh, Kim's here. Hi, Kim. So tell us a little bit about your background. You can talk about Cardi's if you want.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be all about them, but tell us about you and how you got into marketing and.
Sure. Well, I am the ultimate, failing forward kind of situation.
Love it.
I have ADHD, and unfortunately, I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until after I had dropped out of high school.
Oh, wow.
Actually, well, technically middle school. The last grade I completed was the second year of seventh grade. It's the last grade I passed, I should say. And, I'm 40 years old, and, it was at a time where, they were just starting to, they were getting a little more liberal with, okay, we're throwing out the ADHD. We're just going to throw that diagnosis out there a lot. I actually went through a full 2 days worth of testing and everything. And again, this was after the fact. And, really I started noticing, in hindsight, I started noticing the decline in my, or the rise in ADHD, fourth grade. On Fridays in fourth grade, I went to a small private school, and if you finished your math test, you'd have Monday through Thursday would be the lessons, and then Friday you would have a test. If you finished your math test, because it was right before recess and lunch, you could go outside and have recess and lunch. Yeah. So I was the first one done with that test every week. I didn't get anything right because that wasn't the goal. That wasn't the goal. The goal was to go outside and burn off all this energy. It eventually caught up, and you stay, you kind of get behind and everything. So it's after a little bit of, self-discovery, I got a job, and my first job was on the Bay Queen, which was a dinner dance boat out of Warren, Rhode Island. And I was 15 years old. I convinced them to let me work in the shipyard during to the winter. You're like, yeah, I'm homeschooling. This is hands-on. This is mechanics and blah, blah, blah. And I learned a lot of stuff doing that. And, I had done other jobs. I'd taken music lessons as a kid, so I was very, involved with music and playing with bands. And as soon as I got my driver's license, I started roadieing for bands and playing with bands more and doing different things. At one point, I got hired by Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus to play in the band there. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Made my mother real proud. So literally dropped out of school and joined the circus is kind of the story.
Ran away and joined the circus. That's where that comes from.
It's a beautiful thing. And so, fast forward, the circus was a short-term thing. And I had, I discovered volunteer firefighting. I said, okay, let me try this, because this might be a way for me to kind of, figure out a career path or something. I'm getting older, and, I was, getting older at 18 or 19. And so I started doing that. And then a position opened up at Cardi's for customer service. It was a full-time position. I was an early riser. It was a 5 a.m. start, and it just worked. And I got there, and it was about 2 months into the job where Pete Cardi actually approached me and said, hey, you seem to have a lot of energy. Would you consider, would you want to do extra gigs, extra things on the weekend for a little, to obviously get paid, but, doing these events and stuff. And so I jumped at that opportunity. And so I started doing that. And within a month, they said, all right, well, look, he kind of pulled me aside. He said, look, you're kind of writing your own position here. If you want it, it's yours. If you don't, that's fine. You can just, everything that's kind of you've built, you can kind of just, land the plane, sunset it, and go back to customer service. But they were very clear. And I should say, I worked with all three of them. Pete just handles more of the marketing and the promotional side of things. They all have their own responsibilities, but he's the one that really, said, look, if you want to learn this stuff, I'll teach you. I'll give you as much rope to hang yourself, but we won't let you fall off the cliff. And they really let me kind of do my thing. And, they were, learning just, what it was to kind of be such an active partner in the community, working with nonprofits. I have, I got great parents, great, wonderful grandparents, that, really, kind of brought me up right. And it scared me into scared me out of the wrong paths, I should say, or that's kind of where I got to where I was. And in 2016, I'd been there for 15 years, and I was doing everything from the events. We were doing commercial creation. I was doing working with the advertising, working with the TVs, the radios, and all that other stuff. There's some changes were coming down the pipe as far as just how the business was kind of working. And Pete said, look, if you're going to make a change, if you've ever considered, doing something different, he goes, I think now's the time to do it. And, and I was going to be loyal. They really, they became really like three extra dads to me. And it was, it was great. And, I was going to stay loyal, but he was the one that said, look, we'll be fine. Believe me, we'll be fine. We were fine before, not in a horrible way, not in a mean way, but, but he said, we want to work with you. Whatever you're going to do, we want to work with you. And so that's why, obviously, I've created some of the social media stuff. I do work with clients. I still do a lot of work with Cardi. It's great people. And it's a wonderful store, but, it's kind of branched out into doing unique things. Like working with Cat Country 98.1. I had filled in on WPRO for a while. I know how to talk. And, doing stuff with Channel 10. And also I work I started working with the Pawtucket Red Sox, being the PA announcer. They liked my voice. They don't need a face for it, so it's great because I get a face for radio. And so now I'm up with the Worcester Red Sox. So I've made it work to this point. I've had fun doing it, and that's kind of been the whole deal.
That's so awesome. It's awesome that you were able to learn that about yourself and create a career really around who you authentically are. That's so awesome. And that's such a big takeaway for everyone in the group, because I don't know if it's because we're 80s babies, because I'm pushing 42 now. So I'm getting close to 40 and I'm like, man, all my 80s baby friends, we all have that ADD, ADHD. And back then it wasn't a thing,
Right. No, it was you're hyper, you and the IEP stuff. And last year, well, over the course of the last year, I did for Channel 10, I did a deep study on like 4 or 5 different technical schools. They had me doing reports, the high school dropout, doing reports on these amazing tech schools, vocational technical schools we have in Rhode Island and Southern New England. And it just wasn't pushed as much back then.
Yeah.
And if I would have had access to a Bristol Aggie, if I would have had access to like, the Wood Soccer Career and Technical Center, I probably would have stuck it out. But we really didn't have something like that in the East Bay, and that's okay. That's fine. There are, alternatives for it, but it's like anything else too. How many times are we hearing like, look, right after high school, you don't have to go to college. You can, there's great jobs out there. There's great careers. Do what makes you happy. That's the big thing. So.
Right. I've seen those posts, that are like, look at people who were college dropouts, and it's like Steve Jobs and, oh my God, the Microsoft guy. Why can't I think of his name?
Oh, Bill Gates. Yep.
Bill Gates. Thank you. ADD brain too. I'm writing the book. But I love, you're a local person, just like all of us. Right. And you've been through probably a very similar background than a lot of us have, and you're doing something that you love, right? And being, pretty successful at it from where I'm sitting, and that's awesome.
I've only been successful because I've I've been very fortunate and blessed to have success, people investing in me,
Yeah.
with that, the Cardi brothers, they do so much work in the community, and, they've
Yeah.
seen a lot of things. They've worked with Meeting Street for decades. They've worked with the Ronald McDonald House. They've worked with all these different companies and organizations. And so they understand things. And there were times where, like, my ADHD is, and I'm actually working on a video, because I do make my own content for social, but explaining my ADHD. ADHD is so personal. It's so different.
Yeah.
I'm and at one point, and Pete Cardi really, he kind of had an understanding of this, just from being, working so long, working with so many people. He said, okay, when are your good times, and when aren't your good times?
Yeah.
And, I'm
Yeah.
good early morning. I'm really not great, middays, as far as like being able to sit and concentrate. But later on in the afternoons, it's because it's a chemical thing, within your brain. And, there were times where, he would see me like getting really frustrated with something, or I could see I was kind of banging a wall, and he'd say, look, you need to stop. We got to figure out how can we take your talents and make them work here to help, solve the problems that we have. And, it was great. And, he had the foresight to see that, even going forward, with what I'm doing now.
That's so great. That's such a great like mentor story too. I think two key takeaways for our group here is one, being really authentic to who you are and not trying to have to fit into a box, right? So, here's a person who didn't graduate high school, but who cares, right? He's still doing something that's awesome, and had a great opportunity with Cardi's, and had a mentor who was willing to pour that expertise and love and patience and kindness. And that really makes a big difference, and especially resonates with entrepreneurs, because I know for myself, sometimes we're like, oh God, we know we may have shortcomings, or we may have different abilities than other people have. We may think we're not good enough, but you're literally living proof sitting right here that you've just got to stay the course, right? Have a little bit of, have that work ethic, have that authenticity to it, and good things will happen.
But the cycle only, there's a key thing to this whole thing, and I love what you said there as far as the takeaways. There's a key note here, that the cycle only continues. My story only continues in other people if I make sure that I perpetuate and keep my hand open. Nick Ronapete's dad, he had a phrase. I never met him. The gentleman, he passed away in the early '80s when we were both young. But he said, if you walk around with your hand closed, nobody can take anything out of it. Nobody can put anything in it. But if you walk around with your hand open, people can put things in and take things out. So walk around with an open hand. And, when and look, I just like you, just like anybody else watching here, you'll get the fly-by-nights. I get the LinkedIn messages all the time from people that are just, they're just literally throwing whatever they can at the wall, hoping, whatever will stick. It's like the people who get the phone calls, at midnight, from the person wanting to know how your extended warranty is doing. There's a lot of that phoniness out there, but there is authenticity out there. You're exactly right. And if you recognize that in somebody, it's if you have that, that intuition, and it could be a spiritual thing, it could be just a karma thing or whatever. If you see that, it really is incumbent on you, and it's only going to benefit you to make the investment in that person, whether it be the time, the small things. And you don't have to force yourself. Just say, look, I've done a lot of different things similar to what you've done. If you ever need a reference or somebody, call me. If I don't know the answer, I'll point you in the right direction. But that's the only way this whole cycle continues.
I love that. I love that. I think I think we're seeing now too, with this coaching economy that we're kind of in, right? So a lot of people are taking their specific expertise, making coaching courses and funnels and all this kind of stuff. You probably know this because you're in marketing too, right? So there's a lot of people that have had experiences similar to yours and have figured it out. And now they're going out and teaching other people how to do it. And I super, super, super admire anybody that can do that. And I love everything that you've said, because you're like, hey, this is me. This was my struggle. This is how I overcame it. And other people are going to benefit from that. If you kept that in and didn't tell anybody, you know, like, to be able to share that with the world is so brave and so necessary. So
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And yes, I mean, and again, it's funny because you probably don't realize how many of those marketing funnel, coaching funnel things are unless you're within this industry. Because I gotta tell you, my dad's a farmer, farm family, and obviously I had no interest in that family business because of ADHD. Things don't grow fast enough. Which it's a wonderful business. It's a hard business. It put food on the table and and a roof over our heads. But it's they don't know about funnels. My mother's in education. She doesn't know about funnels. My wife is an early childhood intervention specialist. They don't do funnels. We do these funnel things and we see this stuff, and it's important sometimes that we have to really make sure we step outside of ourselves, take a step back and kind of look at it from the outsider's perspective. You mentioned Bill Gates, and I know I talk a lot, but if you ever get a chance, go back to 1997. There's a video online of him talking, and a person comes up and he's doing a Q&A, and if you have, he was the king of sales. He really was. I mean, he was a jerk. He was he was a real jerk at times, and the stories are legendary. But a person came up and said, kind of like tried to debunk a lot of what had just been happening with Apple at the time. And the guy said, maybe you could explain, why this is going to work. And then once you figure that out, maybe you could tell us what the heck you've been doing for the last 7 years.
Oh, geez.
Because the guy was really, and, you could see there was, the guy was upset because a lot of stuff, he was a very detailed coder, and Steve Jobs kind of steps back. I said Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs.
You said Bill Gates at first, but then you said Apple.
Steve, so Steve Jobs. I have a sick sense of humor. The dead guy. Sorry. R.I.P. He knew something. He got out of this whole planet before the whole COVID thing. He knew what was up. But but he stood back and he said, and he looked at the person and because it was meant to slam him, and the people was one of the big rooms, and he goes, you can only please some of the people some of the time. And he goes, and you know what? He goes, that person's absolutely right in some ways. He is absolutely right. He goes, but until we can't make the product and then figure out the how it's going to be applied. We have to figure out what the problem is and then make the solution. And the solution is the product. And then, he took the first iPod, and I don't know if you've ever heard the story, when they were creating the iPod, he took the first one and he was so upset, and he was, he pushed for excellence. He took it and he dropped it into a fish tank. He dropped it in the fish tank in the office, and he sat there and he watched it, and bubbles came up, and he goes, there's air in there. This thing is not small enough. Make it smaller. I don't want to see any air. And it was like, holy cow, and that kind of a genius move. It's kind of maniacal. It's kind of like, okay, calm down. But, there is, until we step outside and figure out what is the problem that we're trying to solve, we can create all the funnels, we can create all the systems, we can create all this great stuff. But if we don't have a customer, if we're not solving a customer's problem, we've got nothing.
Oh my God, you're speaking my language. I love it. That's the language of marketing, Ben. I love it. I try. Such a great key point there too, right? So I think a lot of us, especially if you're in network marketing, direct sales, we tend to think we've got this product. This product is awesome. I love this product. I love this thing. But you've got to really make it about the solution and the problem that you're solving for your ideal client, right? One of the things with Obsessed with Success is the first thing I want to know with a client is, who are you, right? What's your story? What story are you trying to tell? And then who are you telling the story to? What is the problem you're trying to solve, and for who are we solving this problem for? Because really the rest is just, it's noise. It's spaghetti, like you were saying. We got these spam messages and things in the mail, and it's like, you've got to really know my product or my service does this for these people, right?
Right. And you got to know who your competition is.
Yes.
And understanding that is such a key thing because look, I'll admit it. Working at Cardi's, they sell mattresses, they sell all the furniture and everything, but a mattress is a rectangle or square, depending on what size you buy, with springs, foam, covering and everything.
Mhm.
And you can get that at a lot of different places. So once you establish that, now knowing who your competition is and who the customer is, now we can figure out, okay, giving them the reason to work with you. What's the reason that, client's going to work with you, whether it's, B2C, business to consumer, or if it's B2B or whatever, what's the difference? Okay, well, if I shop with Cardi's, if I shop at this place, they support all these different charities that are important to me. Okay, so that's key. If I work with Dana, if I work with whomever's watching, building that relationship, you talked about it, I want to know about you. I want to know who you are and what the problems are. And
Yeah.
okay, how can we touch it on these different levels and make it so that everybody wins.
Yeah. I love that. I love it. And you did very well with that at Cardi. It sounds like you still do. I love
I,
that.
I mean, I'm following the recipe that they do.
Yeah.
I could talk all day about them because I worked so closely with them literally for, all this time, and still, and, I can tell you that almost every day, Pete Cardi, practically every day, Pete Cardi goes in there and because when you know, before Nicholas had passed, it was Nick sold it, Pete delivered it, Ron took the money for it, and they kind of broke up the business that way. Now some things have shifted, but Pete was always in the distribution side of things and marketing, and every day he would grab, we'll see those little sweeper units, it's got the little dustpan and the brush, and he
Yeah.
would walk down the dock line just quietly. We first got there, just kind of sweep up, just kind of clean up, and he would use that opportunity to talk to the guys, look them in the eye, and make sure, okay, are they awake before they get behind this big truck with all the furniture. They go to a
Yeah.
customer's home, talk to the third shift guys, and there were even times where if there was something, I'll never forget it. There was some kind of a concern with some product that had come in, and they were saying it was taking a long time for them to assemble it. And Pete Cardi came in one time at 2 o'clock in the morning to the warehouse in the overnight shift, and because he saw that an order was going out, and he told the prepper, he said, "I'm going to assemble this table and chairs and stuff. Because I want to see this. I need to I need to see what you're doing." and
Yeah.
and understanding what his team is going through for the customers, so you're seeing it from all angles. And
Yep.
he didn't want the power tools either. He did it all with the little the little stuff that came in the box because he wanted
That's
to
awesome.
see. And changes happened, eventually, changes were made. And that's the whole thing. How can you innovate? How can sometimes you have to step back, you have to see what the process is, otherwise you're not going to understand it. And if you can understand it better,
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those things. So
I love that. So fanatical, not only about the customer's experience and actually what they're going to go through when they get this piece of furniture that might not be, put together correctly, but also about the people, right? That he
right.
worked with, making sure that they
Your
were.
staff is everything. Your people are everything. Your staff.
Yeah.
And when you were doing events, I know there were times where you would have a few people with you, and you have a limited window of time
Yep.
to make something happen. At some point, they're gonna, the starter pistol is gonna fire, and
Yep.
you got to be ready to go.
Yeah.
And it's that's when the horn sounds to start. That's not the time to start lacing up your shoes.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's
Well, that's so funny because I was a wedding planner for 12 years and people would say, "Oh, I want to do day of coordination," right? And day of coordination was such a misleading term because I would say to them, "Okay, well, we're going to set our meeting and so on and so forth. And, we're going to meet for all these times throughout." And they're like, "Well, no, 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 I just want a day of coordinator." And I'm like, "Well, honey, you don't want me to show up the day of your wedding and be like, 'Hey, what should I do now?'"
I know you're getting your hair done and everything, but my name's Dana. How are you?
Nice to meet you. What should I be doing today?
Exactly.
It's so funny. So Deb's here. Deb is also a marketing superstar. She says, treat your employees well and you never have to worry about the customers, which is
That's true.
so true.
They get the heart of the mission. Absolutely. If we could touch back to the event planning thing,
Yeah.
because, that was part of what I did with Cardi's. And even though I was with Ringling for a short time, the circus, I learned so much about logistics in that short time.
Yeah.
It just fascinated with it. And they, after World War I, believe it or not, the U.S. Army approached P.T. Barnum and said, show me how you move. And a
Wow.
lot of the skills and a lot of the techniques and trade secrets, everything went inside everything. Everything was meant because you had limited space, whether and you're going from time to time, and also time, because it was day, you had daylight and you had all these different elements you had to deal with.
Yeah.
And so timing was the whole thing. And seeing that, even when I was with them in 2000, and even when they closed in 2017, how they move things. And you would always see, if you went to the very last show of a run, you would see the show practically deconstructed before your eyes, but you didn't see it because you were distracted by something else. I mean,
Yeah.
as soon as something was done, it was getting put onto the trucks and the train. They were just running, and because if they were in the building any longer than midnight, they had to pay extra. Like, there was all these things. So it was and I did this with Cardi's. We do these events, we do these big drives for relief for different people who were affected by things, or we did road races, we whatever. As soon as the event started, that's when breakdown began. And because I would start saying, okay, we've done all this stuff to get everything into place for people to enjoy. What can we start eliminating now that everything's running? What can we start eliminating? What can we start taking down and putting away? So that way, when we stop, the event ends at whatever time, we're not stuck with all this stuff that was just sitting there for a long time. Okay. And you start going through, and you're right. You have to work backwards. You have to back that time out. Okay, what can I eliminate? Otherwise, you're burnt out. You're there much longer, and time is money. You're
Yep.
burning that stuff. So it's so
Yep.
critical on the logistics side of things. And it's fun to talk about that stuff all the time. I love watching logistics. I get lost in YouTube videos of
I love it.
different things, but it's a good time. Sure.
That is awesome. Who would have thought working at the circus would fuel so many other areas of your life? I love it.
I know. It's magical.
But right? It's true that, like, every experience you have in life really fuels all these other things. Cause I'm kind of like you. Well, I mean, you had such longevity at Cardi's, but I've done a bunch of like different things here and there, different industries. And you really take like a piece away from all of that.
it's
So
funny. It's funny because I haven't heard the full podcast yet, but Erica Nardini, who is the CEO of Barstool, and whether you like the company or you hate the company, you got to admit that they're the top 50 website in the United States, and they're a disruptor. When the whole pandemic hit, and and obviously they're focused a lot on sports and gambling, but when the pandemic hit, they essentially said, okay, we'll start creating your own content to all their staff. And she said, look, I'm going to enjoy eating, ESPN's lunch. I'm going to enjoy eating all these sports companies' lunches, because we're just going to keep doing stuff. We're going to make these ridiculous. We're going to work hard. And recently, she has a great podcast called Token CEO.
cool.
It's excellent, and she is talking about how the term career is old, and people aren't doing careers as much as they used to. They're doing shorter term, really gaining that experience, whether they're working for 5 years and, working as hard as they can and banking the money, and, taking a couple of years off to do experiences, or they have multiple different things. And how can they, take those elements with you wherever you go? A good friend of mine, Carla Mulhern, who she was with the LLS for a while. She has been with the American Heart Association, and most recently, she just announced that she's going to the Izzy Foundation, which works with sick children. She's a paralegal. She's done a bunch of different things. We were talking one time, and I said, look, I said, the reason why you're successful is not because you're working at these companies. It's because of you and the people that you've surrounded yourself with, because it's the people that are going to make you, you go into, this next area and say, okay, you're going to bring this team, this tribe with you. Even though I may not be an everyday employee of yours, that I know that if Carla calls, she's not going to waste my time.
Right.
And
Right.
it's a good cause, and I trust her. The same thing with a lot of different people, yourself included. I know you're not going to waste my time, and that is what is such a key thing for these
Yeah.
partnerships you build, and having your contacts are key, and
Yeah.
you've got to have one system. It's got to
Yes.
have
Yeah.
one system for managing your contacts, and I realize that there may be there might be more of a female demographic audience listening right now, and I apologize for this, but I have this wonderful iPhone here, and it's backed up to the computer and the cloud and everywhere else. Um, and like most humans, I go to the bathroom every day, and as a male, I'm maybe once or twice a day I'm only sitting. The rest of the time it's a standing situation. When you're sitting, I've given up reading the back of hairspray bottles to it's amazing how our lives transform. And I will go through my call list.
Mm.
And if there's a phone number in there, I'll either block it because it's a spam, or I'll put the name of the person who called. And I'll do the
Yeah.
same thing when I go through on the text messages, is
Yep.
put that name. And then as if I've done that, then I'm going to start going back, and in the notes section of that phone call, I'm going to put the date and what we talked about and different things, and start reviewing that stuff, because you start to build this one central place that you have all your information. And again, you have to back it up in multiple places, put it
Yeah.
on, set it, automate it. So just, set it and forget it. But that right there, because what's going to happen is you're going to run into the situation when you need it most, and you're going to be scrolling through keywords, trying to search terms. And I do the same thing with ADHD, because I get distracted sometimes and I fall off doing that, which I shouldn't. But you have to go back to that. You have to get back to the basics and say, okay, I won't be frustrated with myself if I just take this time, instead of watching a TikTok video, I take this time and put in this information. I can watch the TikTok videos in the middle of the night when I wake up, even though I shouldn't, and it's bad for your eyes and whatnot. But face it, okay, we all have our vices in life. but that's just it. That's where it comes from.
That's so good. That's so many good nuggets of knowledge, right, come from this. I love it. So definitely keeping your network, keeping your connections, and I'm a living testament to that, because 4 months ago now, December 1st, I literally was like, let's start this company. And I leaned on Kim, who was my assistant at a previous company. And I said, let's do this. We can do it. Right. And the first thing that I did was I started reaching out to people that I knew before, from maybe it was from 10 years ago when I worked for the Providence Phoenix, or 15 years ago, really, or 10 years ago when I worked for this place or whatever. And those connections have led to so many beautiful things, and not just clients and business, but just so many awesome things have happened in the last 3 months, because I just went back to my roots and I said, okay, who do I know? What can I offer them? Just like you said, keep our grandpa Cardi said, right? Yeah. I was like, what do I have that I can offer somebody that'll help them? And then in turn, build my knowledge and my skills. And that's really where Obsessed with Success came from. I was like, okay, who do I want to work with, right? I defined my ideal client, and I was like, I want people who are so committed to their goals that they're obsessed with success.
Right.
And it stuck.
Yeah. No, that's great. And to be honest with you, I get requests all the time from people that say, hey, I want to, I want to be one of your clients. And right now, to be honest with you, I'm not taking them. I'll take the one-off, opportunities to do interviews like this. I'll take, hey, we're going to do, can I hire you to, do like 2 creative sessions with my staff, or can you consult on a project or help, or creative content or something like that. But, I only have very less than 5 clients that are on retainer.
Yeah.
Because to be honest with you, I love the flexibility to have fun, and I've made it work.
Yes.
And the other, and B, I know I'm not going to be good. I'm not going to deliver the level of service they need. And the last thing I want to do is sit here and try to backpedal and offer make goods and offer all these different things to people. It's like, I can only do so much. as a solo person, and I don't want to have a staff. I don't want to have all these different things. If I want to freelance somebody out or something, that's one thing, do what you do best and outsource the rest. But
Yeah.
I can't like, you know, I can't be everything to everybody. There's a Everclear song from back in the late 90s. You try to be
Everything to everyone.
you just can't be that. You really can't. And so how can you recognize that? Because you're only going to drive yourself crazy. You're only going to drive yourself mad in trying to do that. The bottom line, it's I don't care if you're the best mental health or you have zero mental health. I mean,
Yeah.
you can only handle so much.
Normally at this point I ask someone for like their final piece of advice, but that was just such a good one that's like, I usually say like, what's the best piece of advice you can leave us with? But I love that. Like you have to really, and it just goes with everything that you said. So you've got to know who you are. You've got to understand your limitations, and you can design a life that you love and a career or whatever we want to call it, a business or whatever that you enjoy doing without having to fit into this 9 to 5 punch a clock. I make, X amount of dollars per hour box. Yep. And come out being happy and working with you as you are, where you are. So that's definitely, I think that's the biggest takeaway we can get from you today. That was awesome. So many.
I'm glad you like that. And, we're living in just such a great opportunity, such a great time right now, coming on the backside of a pandemic, which, took a lot of those corporate suits and a lot of that corporate mentality and kind of broke it and smashed it and said, okay, yes, we can do remote, we can do things differently, and survive. And so how can we do different things and incorporate different people with different abilities? Look, somebody still has to make the trains run on time. Somebody still has to, you still have a lot of those jobs where that require you to be in there. But people like yourself, myself, people who are watching right now, they tend to be more on that creative scale, that, that Enneagram there of, if you're really a creative person, and you're going to flourish, you're going to do a lot better if you can kind of change it up a little bit of, and so thankfully, off of the heels of this pandemic, it's made it more acceptable, yes, essentially, which is good. So, and I've got stories and comparisons that, I could bore everybody for hours with. But but the fact of the matter is, don't look back at these past 2 years and look at everything that was lost. We lost a lot.
We did.
We lost time. We lost loved ones. We lost opportunity. Look back and okay, what can we take going forward? And, how can we use that to our advantage? How can we, recover or reclaim, what this whole situation took from us, not just from a disease, from the virus standpoint, but from the social emotional side, from the connections, and from the mental health, from the equality and the equity, and so many people just look, whatever your stance is, I don't really care. My concern is, if I'm going to work with you, I want to know that you're going to be a good person, and you're going to do the right thing, and you're going to treat everybody equally. But a lot of people didn't even have that kind of concept. They didn't see it until, okay, all this, now we're forcing these kids to learn from home. Well, guess what? A lot of these kids don't have internet in their homes when they're in these lower income areas. How can we improve that? How can we make that better for them? And finally, some people started to say, holy crap, you took it for granted, because you just didn't know. So, take what you can learn. You have to learn stuff. You have to journal it down. You have to write it out. You have to, put it down. So yeah.
I love it. Ben, you speak my language. You're my spirit animal right now. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And pouring from your cup to everyone. We love it. I love everything that you said. I'm so excited. I was super excited. You've always been like a superstar in my book anyways. So I'm super excited that you said yes.
We need to introduce you to some new people.
I'll take it.
Just don't do it on Craigslist. It never ends well. So.
No, we'll skip that part. But I truly appreciate your time and sharing your story. And I know, if one person out there is like, wow, that resonates with me, then it's totally worth it. So
absolutely. Thank you for putting this all together and folks, I hope you continue to follow along. It's going to be great to watch the journey and see how it unfolds.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yay. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And we hope to hear more from you and more awesome things that you've been doing.
I'll be around.
I love it. Thank you, Ben.
Take care.
All right. Have a great day.